committed to preserving the vast customs of a vibrant cultural heritage.
Welcome to Darshan America, folks. We come to you from Washington, D.C. My name is Ramesh Butani.
And my name is Shilpa Alimchandani.
You know, it's a pleasure to see President Barack Obama actually leave for the East Asia Economic Summit. These are the set of countries that actually export a lot of goods right to America, including food items. But we don't sell a lot over there, other than a few multinational companies, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, and some of the Pizza Huts and others. So what President Obama is going out there is asking these Asian companies, why don't you come and make a base here in the United States of America? We got a land which is cheaper. We're going to make sure you don't see much of a regulation. So he wants to make sure he attracts some businesses. You know, he has done everything else in this country. I mean, he's been going around the country talking about, give me the stimulus money and all of that. He's not getting that. So I'm glad to see him go out and actually try and convince some of these countries, hey, come on, open some shops here in the United States.
Well, I mean, obviously, times are pretty tough right now in the United States, and it makes a lot of sense to try and create jobs here at home. What I thought was really interesting is this Time magazine article that we were talking about, which is saying that even though the assumption has been for a long time, and particularly pro-business Republicans will tell you, regulation is bad for business, right? We won't grow if we have too much interference in government regulation. That's not necessarily the case when you look at all the countries worldwide and their GDP growth. A lot of the countries with huge amounts of regulation are growing rapidly, much faster than the U.S.
That is a World Bank study that we are talking about. Even though we are the fourth friendliest country as far as opening a business is concerned, our GDP growth in the last 5 years were only 15%. Now compare that to India. In 5 years, they had a growth of 102%, and we know the type of corruption they have and the type of licensing Raj they have. They still could grow that much. I mean, it's amazing that that's what is happening, but I don't really believe these numbers. To be very frank with you, I'm a businessman. I understand regulations. I want to tell you, when you regulate, only the rich get richer. Seriously. Because the cost of entry into the business becomes much higher for the new people to come in and comply with these new regulations. So you will find that those who have businesses, they will comply with the regulations, unless, of course, certain regulations cut their business. And the idea is if you cut away the regulation, the new entrepreneurs will come in and that'll make the growth.
You know Tom Friedman, the columnist for the New York Times. He's always coming up with some very interesting perspectives on the world economy. And most recently, he was in India, and his headline reads, India's Innovation Stimulus. So you were talking about who are the innovators, who are those entrepreneurs who are making a difference. Now, he talks about, of course, you know, of the 7 billion people on our planet now, you know, going on the road from New Delhi to Agra, he was betting that half of them are right there in India. But he goes on to talk about how inspired he was by seeing all the cell phone towers, seeing all the schools for engineering and for business and for physics and all of these things, and gave some really specific examples of young business people who are doing very, very creative things to bring up the rest of the country, particularly rural India, which is still very much stuck in poverty. So let me just share kind of one positive, inspirational story with you from this piece. Did you know that a quarter of the world's blind people actually live in India? Okay, a quarter of the world's blind people, which is hard to imagine. And most of this blindness is actually quote-unquote avoidable blindness. It's caused by lack of screening in rural areas in many cases, or lack of ophthalmologists who actually can treat some of the medical conditions like diabetic retina, cataracts, glaucoma, all of these common problems with eyesight. So there is a particular entrepreneur called K. Chandrasekhar, the CEO of Forest Health, and in his company, they have invented a single, portable, intelligent, non-invasive eye pre-screening device. And this pre-screening device is something that can detect 5 of the major ailments that cause this avoidable or preventable blindness. And that could really impact people living in rural areas and make a huge dent into this problem in India.
With one entrepreneur, no. But if there are thousands of them, yes, it certainly will make the difference. Up here, folks, in this country, we are talking about education. In fact, there's a piece by Fareed Zakaria in Time magazine. What he is saying is that we are actually falling behind in high school education. Reason being, teachers. We don't have great teachers. We don't have great respect for them. And at the same time, most of the teachers are controlled by the unions, you know. What he's saying is it's good for the teachers to get a job, but it's not very good for the students because they don't have the best teachers. Now compare that to Netherlands. You know, they only select 1 out of 10 applicants, and these are must have a master's education before you're allowed to teach.
It's very competitive.
Yes, and they also pay them as much as a doctor gets or a lawyer gets. In fact, he goes on to say, you know, Steve Jobs, who recently died, him and his partner, Steve Wozniak, I guess, they both met in the schools in California. And remember, at that time, California had the best schools in the world. And he really believes, even though he was a college dropout, but much of his education was in that childhood, that school. Let me bring a little politics in it. You know, the candidate, Ron Paul of the Republican, he says he's going to do away with a few of the departments. And one of them is education. I wish him good luck in that. I hope he's able to do it where others have failed. At the same time, everybody knows Bill Gross, the head of PIMCO, the world's largest bond fund, sums it up in no uncertain terms. Our labor force is too expensive and poorly educated for today's marketplace. There are 2 variables here: our educational levels, which are low, and our wages, which are high. I mean, that's what they're saying, that we are not well trained, but we all want better wages. And under those conditions, how are we going to have employment?
No, jobs are really a concern, and you're right, there's a real connection between our education system and how we're able to qualify and meet those job needs. One of the pieces I read recently from the Washington Post really is quite critical of higher education in particular in the United States, saying that we used to be the innovators, right?
Yes.
I mean, higher education is where